Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Oh, there you are. I was hoping I'd cross paths with you today. I'd like to invite you to visit the Story Well. It's a place where storytellers of all stripes gather. From improv performers to authors, screenwriters to playwrights, we all tell stories. But we're not here to talk about craft. We're here to make something out of nothing. Each episode of the podcast, your host, that's me, sits down with a creative person, and based on a series of random prompts, we get elements that we make into a story. Will it be a noir novel about King Kong? Or a Broadway musical about JFK? Even we don't know. That's the fun part. But what do you get out of this, besides a good time with fun people? Simple. The idea is then yours. That's right. Whatever we come up with, we give it away for anyone to use however they'd like, no strings attached. It's like each episode comes with a free prize inside. The Story Well with Kyle Olson. We'll save you a seat at the table.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Hello and welcome back to the Star Wars Generations podcast. I'm Matthew, your host, and while we all enjoyed Erin getting to have a solo run on Solo, today the whole crew is back so I can defend myself against spurious accusations around music and my age. I am not a Celine Dion fan. I will never be old enough to be a Celine Dion fan.
What happened?
Thank you
when I
very
was
much.
Gone?
The last week's episode, there were some aspersions made, but nonetheless, we're going to put that in the past. Like this movie, we're going to ignore everything that happened before it and just talk about it. We're talking, of course, today about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the final movie in the trilogy, the final movie in the 9-episode Skywalker saga that started with A New Hope. And we got a lot to say about it. And I'm going to start from the beginning and just say, this is a movie that I have had a lot to say about. The podcast had already started by the time the movie came out, I believe. And so I think we've already done like 2 episodes on it where it was me talking a lot. And I've mentioned it at other times. So mostly this week, I want to hear from you guys about what you thought about the movie. I'm sure I'll have some thoughts to interject. But like the last one, there's a lot of controversy at this movie. There's a lot of people who really love it. There's a lot of people who really hate it. And there's a lot of tired old arguments that we've all heard a million times before. This isn't the place for that. On this episode, Rey is a Skywalker. That's what we're told. We can discuss if we like that or not, but that's what it is. This is the canon, and we're going forward with that. So let me just start by asking you, Erin, what do you think of this movie?
I have such complicated feelings. Here's the thing. I really enjoy it. Like, it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. But I just couldn't help watching it and being like, but we just symbolically destroyed Kylo's mask. Why is it back? Or like, didn't we just talk about not continuing the Jedi? And didn't we burn those texts? Like, there was a few things like that that really got me. But honestly, like, just watching it, it's very entertaining. It's a good movie. I'm bummed about a lot of the missed character opportunities, but we did still get some pretty cool new characters.
Yeah.
And overall, it's an exciting movie. Yeah.
Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of this movie. I feel like anytime I've talked about it with any of my friends, I am in the minority, if not the only one, who very much enjoys it. I saw it in theaters 9 times.
That's all?
Yep.
I think for me, I want to clarify, like, I'm not just like blindly like this movie's perfect. I have
Yeah.
many issues with it as well.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll get into them as we talk more here. But I think for me, like, it was the first time in this trilogy, and really in a while, where like we just got to go on an adventure with like, we were with Ray, Finn, Poe, like the core gang. We can also talk about the fact they left Rose out later, but like just having the three of them with 3PO and R2D2, and like it was just like the first time I felt like since maybe even the originals, we really just got like a fun little adventure following the same little crew around the whole movie.
Mhm.
And yeah, I agree. There was some weird choices made, and like bringing back the way the Death Star very clearly blows up completely, and now there's just a big old hunk of it there, but still intact. And some of the weird things they introduced was odd. But something else I also thought was a lot of people I know don't love is it doesn't bother me as much as I think it bothers a lot of other people that Palpatine returned. I
Mhm.
think the way that it was done was very questionable and poorly done.
Yeah.
I also very much see, and we'll talk again. I know we'll talk about. I see the arguments of like it diminishes what Anakin's sacrifice was. I get all of that. To me, I think having Palpatine be this maniacal puppet master behind all of these events, it kind of makes sense to me. And I have actually something to say about Mr. Ian McDermott when we get to that part. But in general, I would just say that fun adventure movie, definitely some mistakes. And I think that like the way that JJ kept, like you said, Aaron, pulling it back from what Ryan Johnson had done was frustrating. But overall, I really enjoyed the film.
That's awesome. I really love hearing that. I love how people get to enjoy it, and I think it's most we're going to talk about. For those who haven't heard me talk about it before, I'll just give a quick summary. I definitely agree with the idea that I think it was, to me, kind of this is the exact opposite of Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones, I think, is a very important piece of the overall story that I think is very poorly executed. This, I think, is very well executed and doesn't make any sense to me in the Star Wars story. But I agree with you. Like, just as a fun movie by itself, it's not painful to watch, the way I think
Mhm.
some others can be. And
Attack of the
uh,
Clones.
I didn't say it. I
No,
didn't say it.
I'm saying it. It can be hard to watch that movie sometimes.
Fair, fair. So let's get into some of the things about this movie, and let's actually start with the Palpatine of it all. Tell me more about what you mean about it's not the problem that he's back, but the execution of it.
So, in my personal opinion, I find that, through all of the books, the games, the movies, Palpatine has always been like this shadowy figure has been kind of pulling the strings. I mean, he controlled Maul. He's the one who created the downfall of the Republic, created the Empire. He had this whole contingent plan in place. And even like before we knew about Project Cinder or the contingency to like rebuild the Empire, you go back to the expanded universe books, which are like very beloved by the community. I feel like we had a clone of Palpatine. We had clones being made of
Mhm.
multiple characters, and it just always made sense to me. And maybe it was because I read the EU books, but it always made sense to me that Palpatine would have had a plan, that he would not just have been in one body and been that arrogant that he would die and just be done. Like it makes sense to me that he would be prepared to return in some way. And as the Clone Wars came out and then Rebels came out, they explored more and more like kind of mystical areas of the Force, and like really kind of more, especially in Rebels, the last season, far out there stuff with the Loth Wolves and the World Between Worlds and all that stuff. And it to me felt like the first time in live action we were getting some of that really, to me, cool and interesting Sith lore. And like it just, I don't know, to me it made sense that he would be the one pulling all the strings and being coming back. But it felt silly to me that the explanation you received was somehow Palpatine returned. And like it just wasn't an explanation. Like you can kind of eventually piece together that like some Sith, but there's been this secret Sith world out in the wild space, unknown regions where these Sith acolytes have basically been like prepping for this, but like it's just
Mhm.
weird to have that kind of thrown in there without any like preparation for that or like any explanation. I know we're backfilling now. I would say this movie I think has actually benefited more than any other Star Wars property by the backfilling done in the shows between The Mandalorian, The Bad Batch, all of these things kind of trying to like make it make more sense. And it is making more sense to me, I think, as things time goes on. Um, but I think at the time, the execution and explanation was poor. It did away with the character of Snoke in kind of a really frustrating way because he was really interesting on his own. I think that like Palpatine could have come back without him having been Snoke. And they could have done a better job explaining it. And again, I think they're backfilling it in a really effective way now, but it's been, what is it now, 5 years since this movie came out, almost 6, and it took a while for them to get to this point, is my kind of point on it all.
Aaron, what about you?
So I agree with Alex about a lot of the stuff with like the EU, like especially a lot of the Old Republic. I love reading Old Republic books.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the Sith stuff is about like immortality and finding ways to pass your spirit on to another living being. So I like it being brought up. I think how abruptly it was brought up in a major motion picture was just like not the most palatable, because
Yeah.
this did stick out to me how like they go, that scene where there's the snake and he's all angry and then Rey heals him and then he goes away and the boys are like, what the fuck just happened? And she's like, I just transferred a little bit of my life force to him and just healed him. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Nobody's ever said that before. What does that mean?
Might have been cool if Obi-Wan did that to Qui-Gon, just as an example.
And they also really, I don't know if you'll remember, but the week the movie came out, that Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was. So like the movie came out Thursday, Friday, and that week they released an episode of The Mandalorian where Grogu does force healing first, so they could try to explain it. And I appreciated that effort, but again, you released that 2 or 3 days before the movie came out. Like
Most people.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the diehard fans will have seen it and like understand the concept at that point a little bit at least. But like, you're really not giving us a lot of time to like take that in, especially with like we've seen like Darth Maul survived, sure, and that's crazy on its own. But like, you're like the Qui-Gon death specifically has never really been remedied because that could have been a very easy fix based on what we've seen. Now that force healing being used almost as a crutch in future Star Wars properties.
Yeah, I think you make really good points. I don't like Palpatine coming back. I was very against it at first. I think I've come more to terms with it, and I think you're right that the in between stuff, the TV shows, and especially also some of the books have really helped to make Episode 9 better. I would say I think actually the third movie is the one that I think benefits the most from Clone Wars, but I think it's close between the two.
Fair.
I think for me, one thing I kept thinking about was that if this had been set up previously, like, and granted, we all know that like Rian Johnson and Abrams didn't coordinate well, and that's a whole other story. But even if just we'd seen hints of this in Episode 7, Force Awakens, like if there'd been little bits about cloning, if there'd been little bits about Palpatine, I think that would have set it up so much more. Instead, this felt very lazy to me. It felt like Abrams had literally no idea what was going to be his big bad in the 9th movie, which we know is his style. Like, he started Lost having no idea how it was going to end, and lots of people are happy about how all that worked out. And one thing I was thinking about, and again, this is in an imaginary world where, let me back up a second. And one thing I was thinking about was that I think part of why it felt frustrating to me is that the most interesting part of the story where everyone hears this broadcast and all of a sudden people are like, wait, could that be Palpatine? Happens completely off screen. And imagine if we had good coordination between these movies, and instead that broadcast happens as the last moment of Episode 8. Like they're getting away on the Millennium Falcon, or we're seeing people across the galaxy starting to hear about what happened, and maybe they're starting to talk about should they help Leia or whatever, and then they hear that voice. Like, that would have worked so much better. But to just tell us, oh yeah, he's back, and that happened, and it was a broadcast, which sounds really weird. I watched those opening credits again, and I'm like, why didn't you show that to me? Why did you tell that to me?
Yeah.
And it's definitely, I think, on the, like you said, just I don't think they went into this trilogy having a strong, cohesive plan and how they wanted to shape it all out, and that made it suffer, unfortunately. I do want to real quick throw in that this last weekend, was Twin Cities Con, and Ian McDermott happened to be there and give a panel. It was super cool.
Ian McDermott, by the way, just for those who don't know, is the actor who plays Palpatine.
Yes, yeah. I got to ask a question. I actually asked him. I asked him like, "Did you have a backstory for Palpatine in the back of your head when you were first filming in Episode 6?" And he was like, "Absolutely not. I got lunch with George Lucas, and he liked my nose, and so he said like, you're in." And basically, just like he was like, within 2 days, a ton of makeup was being put on my face. I was being put in all black in a hood I could barely see out of, and had to climb a dark staircase. And all I could think about was, don't fall off the staircase. And he's like, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything. So basically he was like, I wasn't thinking about Andy Baxter. I was just trying to like keep it together, which I thought was really funny. But sorry, that was a small tangent. My point was, someone asked him specifically, like, how did you feel about Palpatine coming back? And he said, well, obviously, personally, I was thrilled. And he said, it also makes sense to me. He's like, as I've embodied this character, like, he's like, someone like Palpatine would not have risen to where he was without having backup plans for his backup plans. And basically kind of what I said was like, it makes sense to him that he would have a clone prepared and have like, an army ready to fight back, even if the Empire failed. But he also like did kind of, without saying it, was kind of like, how it all came out and how it was produced. Like, everyone can have their opinion on that. So it felt like he was kind of around it, saying that he felt like it wasn't probably the best executed, but he liked and agreed with the idea. So I just thought it was a little interesting thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So let's get into more of the movie, because that's kind of how we all start off. We're now on this new rebel base, and there's a whole bunch more people, which again, sort of just, this just doesn't line up with Episode 8, and we have to deal with that. Let's start talking about the different characters. What do we think about Poe and the journey he gets to go on in this movie?
I wanted Poe to be gay. I'll be really honest with you. I wanted Finn and Poe to get together, and I was really disappointed that they heavily steered away from that when it felt like it was implied in 2 different movies. It felt like, I don't want to put words in any of the Disney people's mouths, but it feels like classic Disney, where they like aren't willing to fully commit on screen. Like, we got 2 women kissing at the end of the movie on screen for 0.2 seconds, and it felt like they kind of threw away what could have been a really cool romance story and arc there. Maybe that was just in my own head, but that was just something I thought was going to be really cool and I was excited about, and they kind of threw it away to have Poe have a romance with some random character we had never met before.
And whose face we never actually see.
Yeah, we only see her eyes briefly. I'm just like, I don't know. To me, it felt forced and silly to do that.
Yeah, and I didn't love, and I know actually a lot of Latino fans talked about this, like, why do we have to give him a background as like a drug smuggler?
Yes.
Like, it just feels so on the nose.
And unnecessary.
The fact that like every other person of color we're getting, with the exception of Rose Tico, who, as you said, is barely in the movie, also has a background as a criminal or a spice runner or a stormtrooper or something like that. I think also I was just kind of disappointed that we don't get any closure on everything that happened in The Last Jedi. And there's a great book, Resistance Reborn, which is all about the period in between Episode 8 and Episode 9, and that talks about like him really feeling all the guilt of all the loss that happened because of his inability to trust Holdo and stuff like that. I would have liked a little bit more of that. And yes, absolutely, I feel like him and Finn was teased throughout the first 2 movies. I also think Finn and Rey was teased. Personally, I would have loved a bisexual polyamorous thing between the 3 of them. That's probably pretty far off in the stratosphere, but at least give any of those 3 to get together.
I mean, just the fact that none of the, I feel like after, it just felt like it fell in the most vanilla possible way it could have in the end. Like,
I would agree.
Good girl falls for bad guy. I don't know, man.
But don't worry, they're both white.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll talk about the kiss in a little bit. That is something I have strong opinions on.
We'll get to that. So how about Finn?
But sorry, I just want to say real quick, I want to say I echo what you said. It really bothered me that they gave Poe like a smuggling background, and also like a one-off unnecessary situation. Like a million things you could have done with him, like, and you just choose that, and it felt just not needed. I honestly would rather not know his past and have that be his past. So
yeah.
Finn, Erin, you have a thought on Finn?
Oh, I love Finn. I feel so bad for Finn. I feel like he spent so much of the movie like sticking up for Rey, and Rey was kind of just like, "You don't know me. I don't even know me. Fuck you." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Damn!" Like he's just out here trying to give his love, and yeah, it sucks to like they spent the first movie building his relationship with Rey and making them close, and then they didn't like the optics of the relationship, or maybe they decided they wanted to go a different way, and then they added Rose, and then Rose and Finn were kind of a thing, and like, she was obsessed with him, he was maybe into it. Tale as old as time. And then this next movie is just like the interaction we get between them is like, "Are you coming? No, I have to stay and study defense plans or whatever." And he like puts a hand on her shoulder. He's like, "We got this." And I'm like, "Oh, that was painful."
And I will say that is partially due to outside circumstances, which, on the one hand, like J.J. Abrams and the writers had no control over. On the other hand, Disney had a lot of control over that they didn't take, which is namely that Kelly Marie Tran, the actress who plays Rose Tico, who was just horribly, horribly abused and harassed and threatened by the haters on social media, and Disney did not come to her protection in any way. And by the end of it, she said very specifically, like, "I don't want a big part in this movie. If I have to be in this movie, I'll play a small part. I don't want a big part. I don't want to be a target again." And I think the movie suffers because of that, but I also think 100% she did what she had to do. And so yeah, so I at least give them the credit that I don't think they intentionally wanted to like write out her and Finn and Rose, but certainly like Disney's failure to kind of step up and like call out its fans and be like, "Hey, this is not okay," contribute to it happening eventually.
Did Rose and Rey ever interact in any movie? I don't think they did.
I don't
I don't
think
think they
so.
did either.
Not that I know of.
That's just crazy. Yeah,
Did
I don't
not
know.
pass the Bechdel test.
No.
Oh wait, never mind. Leia.
Well, Leia, that was, I mean, from what I've read, they basically had tried the one thing they did quote unquote plan in this trilogy is that like each of the original characters would have a really big role in one of the movies. So like Han was the first movie, Luke was the second movie, and Leia was planned for the third movie. And of course, Carrie Fisher passes away. And it does not bother me per se that they included like little bits of her in there, but like it just, I don't know. The way she died in the movie, it felt like they could have maybe killed her off in episode 8 and had it been a little more impactful than R2D2 just sadly watching her die with her face off screen as her hand falls over. And was she holding the dice again?
I think so.
Yeah, the dice that Disney decided to make really, really important.
That I'll admit I never noticed in the original trilogy.
No one noticed them. And then if like I couldn't speak of the Solo movie, but one thing I would have brought up if I was here last week was they purposely have so many details and zoom ins on that dice because they made a big deal out of it in episode 8. And they're like, we have to like set the table for how important these dice are. Which is silly. Now, do I have a pair of those dice hanging from my rearview mirror in my car? I do. I very much do have a pair of those dice hanging from the rearview mirror of my
Good
car.
for you.
But it felt very forced when they were shown tiny in like one frame of the original movie.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So what do you think it was that Finn kept wanting to tell Rey?
Oh my god, I completely forgot about that. Okay, so here's what they want us to think. He's saying, "Oh my god, I love you. I've always wanted to be with you, and I miss you, and I want you to want me." What I'm pretty sure what I want him to say is, "Hey yo, can you describe to me once more about how that force feels? Because I feel like I got that shit.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm on one. Like I feel like we're in the same place, babe." Um,
That's exactly how I would have said it.
yeah. Those I feel like are, we're led to believe obviously like romance because it's like, "Oh, you're about to die. What are you gonna tell them?"
Right.
But yeah, I hope it was about something more honestly important and sincere.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think?
I said the exact same thing. I think that he was going to tell her that like he thinks he's force sensitive, and like, I mean, I think that the fan base is being led on to believe that he may be force sensitive throughout the movies, and
Mhm.
I know that I don't know if it was a deleted scene or they rewrote it, but originally in the fight on Exegol above Exegol, like he was going to display a use of the Force, and they decided to cut it and not introduce that late in the movie.
Mm.
Um, and so I think I agree there. I think it was that he was trying to tell her like, I think I'm Force sensitive. Like, maybe you can like teach me some of that shit.
Yeah. And I do like that in a later, granted, it's one of the animated Lego Star Wars movies, so like take it with huge grains of salt. But in the kind of like summer adventure one, Beach Vacation,
Mhm.
whatever it is called, they do Obi-Wan comes, Ghost Obi-Wan comes, and it's like Finn, you're supposed to be a Jedi.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
I
it all
love
just
that
I
part.
love that part.
it's so good. It's so good. And it just all felt so weird. And I know John Boyega has said that he felt like that there was a lot of racism in terms of how the character of Finn was treated.
Mhm.
In terms of like not wanting him to be with Rey, and then, you know, that kind of like it was amazing to get a woman Jedi, but that it had been really teased that we're also going to get a black Jedi, and that didn't
Mhm.
happen. Granted, we had, you know, Mace Windu, but in terms of like, you know, a main protagonist, um, so yeah, I think there's a lot that happened behind the scenes that we don't know the details of, but I think like I like where they went with him and the other stormtroopers, and I do like this idea of other stormtroopers kind of wanting to fight back.
Mhm.
Um, I wish though there had been some level of like, so therefore let's try and like maybe like rescue or like turn some of those other stormtroopers or like convince them to rise up, because it did feel sort of weird of like, yeah, the stormtroopers are all orphans. We're all like, it's not their fault. They're all programmed from they were young. Let's slaughter them by the millions while we blow up all these ships, you know? Like it just
I will say those ships, the ships that they blew up mostly though are ships from Exegol, and technically they don't know who's on there. It could just be Sith like acolytes, right?
Well,
fair.
it's the I believe the canon on that is that the Sith troopers are like the children and descendants of like the Sith acolytes who are living there. So they're like from birth brainwashed, kind of like Plato's cave style, to just believe that like the
Right.
Sith and the Dark Lord and the dark side are like the end all be all, and Palpatine is like the ultimate master. So
Okay, so not them
So they're
necessarily, but
still
they're
children
they're
on
still brainwashed from
ships.
birth, unfortunately, but it's maybe slightly better. I don't know.
At least they have their parents.
I um I I will say in this movie, I did like Rey through most of it. I think Daisy Ridley did a really excellent job. I think the opening sequence of her
Mhm.
training is really cool.
Mhm.
I think that you see her growth, you see how just ferocious she is. You can see like a continuation. One of the few things that did continue from episode 8 is her like back and forth on like the dark side, I think. Like, you know,
Mhm.
you're like, I mean, you see her fucking shoot force lightning and blow up a ship, which was okay, weird, I guess, story-wise, but visually really cool. Alex
Yeah.
was a fan of that on screen.
Mhm.
But like you see her fighting that and like I guess like not as not I would argue not as tactfully or gracefully done as they did with Luke in episode 6, but like a similar vibe of could she turn? Like, could she become, you know, like in the end, could Kylo turn to the light side and Rey turn to the dark side? Like that was a genuine question. Like you weren't 100% sure if not, and I appreciated that. I appreciated the way that she portrayed that character, and then showing her resilience at the end of the movie, um, like when faced with like impossible circumstances.
Mhm.
And she's funny.
She is funny.
The movie
Aaron,
was
what'd you
I forget always. This movie is funny.
Yeah.
It is
I
funny.
I think it lands a lot of humor. I think it does a lot I think the acting is good. I thought the directing overall was pretty decent. I agree with you. I really like Rey's journey in this.
Mhm.
I feel like they came up to a line that I really wanted them to explore and then backed away from it in that and the second movie had kind of started this out and then like the Force lightning, like I really wanted to see them explore like what if you're not so doctrinaire about like avoiding the dark side at all costs, you
Mhm.
know? Um in Ahsoka with Balin and Shin, we're now getting these characters who are kind of some interesting, like they're not Sith, but they're definitely somewhere on the dark side. And you know, I think they did some really interesting things of exploring that with Rey and exploring like sometimes she taps into her anger and it makes her a better
Mhm.
fighter. And Yeah, I just wish that had been explored further.
I agree.
And if we get into plot points, the last character maybe we could touch on is Kylo in this movie, who I
Well, let's
feel
just
like.
talk about Rey a little bit
Oh, sure,
because
sure, sure. I thought you guys were done. I'm sorry. Yeah.
we change one of the biggest things about her, the whole idea that she's from nothing.
Oh, yes.
How do we feel about her being a granddaughter of Mr. Palpatine?
Grandpappy
Palpatine.
Palps.
Good old Palp.
Ian McDermott did say, he goes,
Grandpappy
the thing that shocked me the most is I have a granddaughter.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know. It's just that's the thing that most glaringly in my face is like, this is so different from movie 2. Because Kylo was just shouting at her, "You are nothing," and now he's like, "Remember, I know you know," and I'm like, "What the fuck, man?"
Right.
Like that's just like difficult for me to get past. Just how quickly that switches, which is like, yeah, sure, he got different information, but I liked it when she
And I've
was
heard,
nothing.
yeah, I've heard the argument that like he lied to her in episode 8 to try and like evoke an emotional response out of her. But I agree with Aaron. I mean, that probably to me is also like one of the weirdest things to me is that like
Deviations.
it's just strange. Like it, like because based again like on the more expanded canon of it all is that his son isn't even like his biological son. It's like a clone of him, I guess.
Right.
Which like I kind of wanted it to be like a son he had when he was having an affair with that woman that bald lady who stood next to him in the Senate. What's her name? The really creepy looking one. There is
nothing.
there is some canon somewhere, I swear to God, where they were like actually like sexual partners.
Oh.
She like if you it's like in episode 2 and 3, she stands. It's Masamida. Sorry, I can't ever say his name right. Palpatine, and then this like very pale, bald, goth-looking woman who apparently like worshipped the ground Palpatine walked on, and apparently they had a thing. So I was always like, oh, what if they had a kid? That would make like a little more sense to me. But like a random clone, so they like raised the daughter of a rogue Palpatine clone and this other woman we know nothing about. And they like turned against Palpatine, and I just felt like very like kind of weird and out there, and then they like again like I mean as soon as like I I almost appreciated a little more that she was like I'm gonna choose instead to be a Skywalker, because I appreciate the concept at least of like you're not defined by your parents or your family, like you can choose who you are. I mean a lot of us have like problematic families and parents, and it's good to be able to like separate yourself from that. But it all was so rushed. I mean, you find out she's a Palpatine like 2/3 into the movie, and within a span of an hour, I'm not a Palpatine, I'm a Skywalker. Like it's just whiplash around.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt to me like there were two fundamental points from The Last Jedi that I really loved. The idea that anyone can become a Jedi. And we just abandoned that with her, and we totally forgot about the little slave kid on Canto Bight. And also the idea that sometimes just being on the right side isn't enough, and you have to do more than just hope they'll all show up and there will be more of us. And this just kind of abandoned both of those. Now I said at the beginning that I wanted to not. I am talking a good deal, but in part because you all keep bringing up the things I don't like about the movie. I thought the whole
Fair.
point was that you liked some things about this movie.
I do. Well, my point is that like I mean, okay, if I think that visually speaking, Rise of Skywalker is stunning as a visual person. I mean, like Pasana, beautiful planet. The way that like that like scene where they're doing the dance and the music, it felt very much like it looked very Middle Eastern, very Moroccan in a way. And I appreciated some of that. I appreciated like again we can discuss the viability of the Death Star being as intact as it was, but like I said, I really enjoyed the movie. I understand there's problems with it, but like I thought that planet was cool. I thought that like Rey exploring the inside of the Death Star was interesting, kind of was a harken back to her scavenger days and like a callback to episode 7. Even just the concept, again, even if it was kind of weirdly placed, that like Palpatine had like a secret room just off screen, episode 6, where he like it would make sense to me that he would hoard Sith artifacts and relics, and that like he would have a secret room, how the door is working, I don't really know, but I don't know. It's just like I think a lot of the sets are really cool. I think the actual adventure was fun. I feel like I'm engaged the whole movie. Babu Frick, incredible character introduction.
Yep.
Love that little guy.
Yes.
And like for me, this whole movie is like the tale of kind of two sides. Like on one side, it's weird that like you little Annie decided to program C-3PO with Sith as a language back when he was a kid. But
Of course.
the concept is fun that like they have to like C-3PO has to sacrifice himself and to like give us this clue to get us to the Death Star.
I just need to jump in on that one because that felt really wrong to me. Because it, like, yes, he makes a big sacrifice, but everyone else is like, dude, what's the big deal? You're a droid. Let's just do that. Like, at first, they don't even ask him. They just decide they're going to do it. And then we just cut to a shot where he says, we're glad you agreed to do this, without ever actually showing them convincing him and him agreeing. And it's funny because all of that happens moments after. Who's the new droid that doesn't like to be touched?
I don't know his name.
Dio,
thank you. That, Rey is like, oh, someone really treated you badly. And I'm like, oh, look, droid rights. Droid rights are cool. Oh, nope. We're going to destroy 3PO without him having any agency in this. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Never mind.
Let's just take him out. Yeah, that was. I don't know. It's weird, but it also feels like classic. Because I'm almost positive something like that happens in the Clone Wars to C-3PO, and he's all like, "No." But also, I think that was a bad guy doing it to him, so consent wasn't on the table.
I mean, I think that 3PO has been like a comical relief and a doormat for characters throughout the series. So it kind of made sense to me that would happen. But he also like I liked that like they didn't ask him at the end. He was like, I'm just thankful I got to be here with my friends, and like it sounded like at the end he was making the choice to do it.
Right.
I know. I thought it was just a cool moment because 3PO always has been kind of just a laughing stock. He finally had a really important role, and Red Eye 3PO, kind of badass looking.
Kinda.
And I mean, it was also funny afterwards where he's just like, "Who are you people? What is going on?" It's like reverted 3PO back to his scared little self. Was really funny to me. But not Planet 2, which I now cannot remember the name of. They introduced a lot of really interesting, unique planets, like the snowy planet they were on here. Exegol is fucking cool. I'm sorry. Like in the beginning of the movie when Kylo pulls up and it's just this like monolithic thing and you're hearing Darth Vader and Snoke and Palpatine and there's these giant statues of Sith Lords and there's lightning and I'm like, this is exactly how I would picture a Sith homeworld to look like. The vibes were immaculate in my opinion.
Yeah.
Very creepy, very well done. And again, we can debate up and down whether Palpatine should have come back, but like his portrayal and that giant robotic arm moving him around and shit, like that was stuff. And that whole sequence of kind of like stuff of nightmares. That was creepy as hell, and I really appreciated it. Visually, this movie really blows me away.
That's fair.
I agree. Yeah, Exegol. I love planets that have cool climates.
Yeah,
like Camino. It's like Camino, but Sith.
Yeah,
As far as like constant storm and like
Goth Camino.
emo
Sorry.
Camino.
Emo Camino.
God. Stay classy, emo Camino.
Emo Camino. That's so funny. I agree. I think that the unique planets and like the lightsaber duel on the last planet again, which name is escaping me, the water planet on the Death Star.
Endor.
Oh right, it was a different moon of Endor. It was a different moon of Endor. But did it have a? Never mind. It was silly to me that there wasn't really music happening during the fight. Like they just chose the no music route, which like I feel like lightsaber duels always have some cool music going with them. But like it was a cool fight. I mean, it just felt like I don't know. It felt like there was a lot of emotion on it, but then it became just like a who can do more, who can act harder, or who can like do more crazy tricks and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
And then with this, like, I don't know, like then Rey finally wins and then she heals him anyway. And just all of it felt like, why do we have that fight? Was it just to get some angst out, like some sexual
Yeah.
tension out? Like what? I don't know what's happening here.
Well,
Visually again, cool, but like the actual
Mhm.
execution was just like, why? What is happening?
you wanted to talk about Kylo, so let's talk about Kylo, and who I guess becomes Ben Solo by the end. What'd you think of his arc?
We love Ben Solo. I am happy he turned back to the light side. I will say, again, it feels a little rush there, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like he's fighting. He's so hell bent on, killing the Emperor, becoming the new Emperor, like inheriting that Sith spirit that Palpatine wants to give to Rey, and then like he fights Rey one time. I guess he fights her twice. But he fights her in real life one time. I don't know how to describe the other fighting they did.
I will say the fight where she's on his ship and he's down on the planet was amazing.
It was
Like,
how would you
Yeah.
describe? So they're fighting. They're actually fighting each other, but are they fighting through the Force?
Yeah, they're fighting through the sort of Force connection that's
The-
been set up.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. The first time I saw that, I was very confused, but I eventually got to that
Mhm.
conclusion as well. But I feel like it took a couple battles, and then like at the end of the day, it took like Force Ghost, not actual Force Ghost, just a quote memory of Han Solo somehow talking to Kylo Ren, to convince him to just throw his lightsaber into the water and become a good guy again. I understand, like for movies, we saw the turmoil in him, and it would have made complete sense to me for him to turn to the light side, but I just felt like it was poorly executed. Like again, like it just, you could a little more like wrestling, a little more like he was so resolved at the end of episode 8 and through the beginning of episode 9. It felt weird for him to just like turn on a dime like that without more like discussions and things going on.
Yeah, I agree. It felt pretty quick. I'm just sitting there like, so why didn't you just join her in the last movie? Like
Mhm.
we ended up where we're gonna be, guys. Come on. Not saying that like I wanted him to die a Sith, but like
But then we couldn't have seen Han Solo again, which made no sense.
that's true. Well, it makes sense because Carrie Fisher died and
Yes.
Harrison Ford loved her, so
Yes.
he
Yeah,
agreed
like
to do more.
that one I kind of let them off the hook for, because I think that was one where like real life circumstances intervened.
For sure.
and-
For sure.
But I do think it would have been a much better movie, because I imagine it did feel like, Harrison Ford did his best job, but it just felt like a weird connection between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they'd set up everything with him and Leia so much more.
Mhm.
Yeah, like if she had actually died and like the Force Ghost of Leia comes to say like, I forgive you, or like, being able to have that moment
Yeah.
between Carrie Fisher and Adam Driver, I think would have been really, really special on screen. But I get what you mean though. Like you kind of had to fill it in, and I did enjoy Luke Skywalker Force Ghost. Luke acting as a Force Ghost acted the same kind of fool he did as a human, and I really appreciated it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
we saw a lot of Force ghosties this time around.
Mhm.
But then again, Rey just raises an X-wing that's been underwater for years, supposedly, and it
I
just
thought Luke raised that.
he did. Sorry, I'm sorry. You're correct. Luke raised it, and it was a callback to Episode 5. You're absolutely correct. But still, how does that ship just suddenly work? It's been again underwater for years in an ocean planet.
Mhm.
I think you don't understand just how durable, space mechanics are.
Just like that ship they found in the middle of the Pasana Desert that hadn't been used for like 20 years and just was able to get working real quick.
Just turned on.
Exactly.
Just turned on, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is, I think Star Wars does that sometimes. Like, there's a lot of like just you have to suspend belief in the convenience of some of these things. But I
It's
was
like-
like, twice in the same movie. Come on, man.
Star Wars is so good at like this abandoned thing. Flip a switch, flick it a few times.
The
It's
Falcon,
all coming together.
the Falcon hasn't flown in years, but I can fly it perfectly correctly, and it will fly just fine.
I did appreciate that Ryan Johnson said, okay, what if like we could go all the way to some other planet and all the way back within 36 hours? And then J.J. Abrams was like, hold my beer. These characters are going to go to 7 different planets in 16 hours. And not only that, but hyperspeed is now so fast that you can light skip and like skip from
The light
planet to
skipping was
planet.
crazy.
Can you explain that to me?
They're like micro jumps, basically.
But how are the TIE fighters following him?
Because
Don't
now
the-
we can track people through hyperspace.
Yeah,
Is
remember
that what it is?
that was established. Yeah, and
I
the
thought
TIE
TIE
fighters,
fighters couldn't jump through hyperspace.
they have hyper. I think the new ones have hyperdrive. I mean, like remember Thrawn was exploring that during the TIE Defender had hyperdrives in the Age of the Empire, so I'm sure that they just that part didn't bother me as much because I'm sure that like they could have put
Yeah.
that technology to work by 30 years later. But the light speed skipping was interesting. It was cool visually, but it was weird.
I did appreciate that, like, we have so many times had the Millennium Falcon fly so that other TIE fighters hit boulders and rocks and ships that we've literally made a verb out of it. When Finn says, "Are you going to boulder the TIE fighters?" And I was just like, okay, that's you could have tried doing something different, but at least you're hanging a lampshade on the fact that you do that move in all 9 goddamn movies.
I do want to
It's
point out one.
efficient.
I do want to point out one thing, just like a devil's advocate for even myself in the situation. But if a lot of this stuff we're talking about, light speed skipping and like the force battling through the diet, always got a weird things. If this had happened in the Clone Wars or Rebels, we would never bat an eye. We'd all be like, "Oh, this is
Oh,
so
no.
cool." I think even in like Ahsoka, we don't really bat the eyes at some of the weird shit that happens. But like, I think it's the fact that it's a movie and they feel like a little separate or like special within the Star Wars universe. Like weirder shit happens in the Clone Wars and Rebels. Much weirder shit. They fucking they ride some wolves into the ground and appear on the other side of a planet, and like no one batted an eye.
Obviously.
So I just want to like point that out that I think it's interesting that we have like different kind of standards for the animated series and shows versus the movies, even though they're all canon and taking place in the same universe.
I will say for me, I don't think it's a standard of live action versus animation.
Mhm.
I think it's the force versus technology. The Loth Wolves, the space whales, a lot of the stuff, all the weird stuff that happens on Mortis. Purgles, yeah, exactly. All of that is very force initiated. Whereas this
Fair.
is just like all of a sudden we have this technology. And like I don't want to know the technology of hyperspace, but the fact that all of a sudden it's doing stuff that's so different than what it's done before,
Mhm.
does it actually bother me? No. Did it look really cool? Yes. Did it just was like,
Mhm.
why make it 16 hours? Make it 3 days. Like,
Fair. They were in a
Yeah.
rush. Palpatine was going to take over.
They had to get going.
Oh, the other thing is he put his broadcast out and was like ready to launch his ships a day later. He was like, "I'm not wasting any time. Let's launch a mass fleet."
yeah.
That's not true. Like his initial broadcast?
Wasn't this broadcast put out and they like a week later he was ready to launch the ships?
You said a day. Okay.
Okay,
And that makes a big difference to
a
me
couple days.
because Kylo Ren had to go find him first and then come back to find Rey. And then they have to go find him. So I'm just saying.
That's the other
I
thing
mean-
is that like how far is this planet? They had to go through they had to go to like
The stuff.
Yeah, well, the nebula, that's what it's called. They had to go through the freaking nebula and then back in. And I'm like, what? How fast are we moving?
It's a
You know,
triple
and like
neb
all
kind of
this stuff
day.
about the broadcast, it'd be really fun to talk about like what was the broadcast he made and like how did that lead to like why did he want to move so fast? Except we never saw the broadcast.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Somewhere it's on Wikipedia. The actual words of the broadcast are: "At last, the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge. The day of the Sith." I don't remember where it was. Novelization. It was in a
Yeah.
novelization.
But again,
Uh,
like that's not in the movie, so it doesn't count when we talk about the movie.
Right. I'm gonna
You
say
know?
that like that right there, just include that would have taken a minute of screen time, would have made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. If we may, I also want to just talk about the end, kind of the endish of the not the end, but the final stand on Exegol.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Palpatine restored himself by like sucking the Force energy out of Kylo and Rey, and before that, again, the Knights of Ren, who were like so hyped up in Episode 7, non-existent in Episode 8, are kind of bopping around like stalking people in Episode 9, and then Kylo defeats them all handily in like 1 minute on screen by himself.
Girl.
What?
They didn't even do anything. Like this
I
whole
know.
time you've been talking about like the Knights of Ren are so cool. I'm sitting here like, I don't even know who you're talking about because I've never noticed them. And then I'm watching this movie again and I'm like, where
They were.
fucking
I
where
was
did
saying they were
they
hyped
ever
up in
tell us
episode 7.
who
Like
they
they're in
were?
the flashback. You know,
They're just kind of like fucking there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's never like, oh no, the Knights of Ren are coming. Like I kind of would love that. Like it's a cheesy, sure, but it's like, can we put like a label on it or like, oh, these guys are showing up more than once? I don't know.
yeah, and they're explored in the comics. I know it's not the movies, but like, and they're like hashed out. But like, all we get in episode 7, we get like Snoke saying, "You're the master of the Knights of Ren," and like you see them in that flashback that Rey has, and like they were hyped up a lot in the promotional materials of like this like occult Sith like elite group, basically like CO Team 6 for the Sith, basically. And then like we just didn't get anything about them. You're right. And then like JJ threw him back in episode 9. And I was just like, where have you guys been? What's happening? And then you just get defeated so easily. It's like, what the hell? You guys look, it's like the coolest design of characters. Probably spent so much money on those costumes and then killed them off so quickly.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, can't argue.
But then Palpatine sucked up their life force, which was interesting. And he's restored to his former glory, and then fires off the largest Sith lightning I have ever seen in the existence of mankind.
That was crazy.
Which, again, visually, fucking sick.
It was
Like,
wide.
Wide, seeing him just like ravage all the ships at the same time, not hit any of his own ships, but just hit all of the resistance ships, and they're all going down. Kyle has been flicked off a cliff. He's like, as I fell, now the last of the Skywalkers will fall too. It's like still holding a grudge. Comical. But I will say, for me, my favorite single moment in the entire movie, and I know there are mixed emotions on this, but when Rey looks up and it just fades to the stars and you hear the voice of all of the old Jedi, I mean, and I could pick them out one by one. I started crying in the movie theater. I will not lie. Like hearing Anakin and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Ahsoka and Mace Windu and Caddy Muddy, like all of these. I just, oh my god, it was so cool to like hear all of them, hold her up and bring her up, and then like the way that she like fights back, where like she's not like, again, very like unlike the Jedi, like other Jedi to me, like she was just blocking. She wasn't like attacking. And she uses Leia and Luke's lightsaber, which including Leia's lightsaber, great little moment they had in there. But and it broke the chain of the Sith, because at this point, no Sith apprentice kills Palpatine. No one attacks him. He is killed by his own lightning. And it, to me, epitomized the way that Luke was trying to teach. Like, he didn't actually fight Kylo. He kept dodging him. And Rey didn't actually have to fight Palpatine. He just had to like throw his hatred and reject him, basically. And to me, that was one of the successful parts of this movie. One of my favorite parts of this movie.
I like that idea. I didn't get that from the movie. Like I see how it's there. I just didn't walk away thinking that.
I also had read somewhere that all of those Jedi had recorded. I don't know how true this is, so grain of salt, but that they had recorded those lines in costume, like were filmed recording them, and like we would have seen like Force Ghost appearing behind Rey in that moment.
Oh, that's really cool.
And he would have really loved to see that. But then it also makes me think about like the fact that like Obi-Wan's like, Luke, I cannot interfere. I cannot interfere when you face Vader. And then every Jedi who's ever lived is like, we will interfere when you face Palpatine, Rey. We got you. Don't you worry. Like poor Luke being just left out to dry.
Or they're all sitting there like, this guy fucking sucks and he won't go away. So god damn it, fine, we'll help.
But imagine all the Jedi.
Like, it's against Ghost Code, but
yeah, all the Jedi like watching Luke fight, just like you can't see them. They're like throwing popcorn back, watching the duel between Vader and Luke. Like, damn, little Annie's getting cooked right now. Oh my god.
I want us to wrap up pretty soon. We've gone about an hour, but Alex, it seemed you had some thoughts about a kiss.
Yeah, that part of the movie, like, it went from like my favorite part of the movie to maybe my least favorite part of the movie. Because like Rey basically like uses her energy, I guess, to defeat Palpatine, but then like she's like dead for a second. Like, why was she dead for a second? And then Kylo is like, or Ben, I'm sorry, now he's Ben, It's like, I'm gonna redeem myself without saying a word by reviving her.
Mhm.
And then like Rey kisses her. And like if it's taken from a moment of like, I guess like you just saved my life, like a momentary moment of gratification, like, or like, thank you. I guess maybe if you spin it that way, it's fine. But like, it just like felt so jarring and out of place and weird. And then Ben just dies. It's like Rey dies. We bring her back to life just so they can kiss, and then he dies. And then like, unlike Rey, he just immediately fades into the Force. She doesn't even try anything on him.
Yeah,
All
he's
right,
just
Ben's dead. And like, I just don't think he needed to die. Like,
yeah.
I guess like maybe the thought was that like he would have had to stand trial for all his war crimes and they never would have accepted him. But like that would have been an interesting story to me about like, does Ben go into exile? Does he like, what does he do now that he's like tried to turn back to the light side? Is he forgiven? Is he never forgiven? What's his role in the next era of Jedi and the galaxy? But we'll get absolutely fucking none of that. And now the Han Solo Leia bloodline is now just dead. The Organa bloodline is just dead, and the Solo bloodline is just dead. And I'm just like, damn, I did not need him to die, really. It just didn't, it wasn't a satisfying
Mhm.
death. It felt weird. The kiss was jarring. It made me uncomfortable.
All the
Literally,
feelings you want to feel at the end of a movie.
I just like, I know that people complain about like the Rose and Finn kiss, but that felt way more comfortable than this did. This felt like just weird.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Aaron,
like
what about you?
I'll have to watch it again, but because I've thought about this and so many people have talked about it online for so long that it's like when I watched it this time around, I kind of wrote it off as like, have you ever done something like with some like other person, and you're so excited that you did something good, you did it right. And it's like maybe you've been spending a lot of time with that person lately, and it's like suddenly it's like, oh fuck, like yes, success, and your faces are close, and then you just fucking kiss, and then it's like, oh, okay, well that was just like, I guess, yeah, like excitement, that's all
Yeah.
that was. So it's like that's kind of what I wrote it off as, is like I feel like she's just so excited, and like yeah, they've had this weird like tension between them.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't like that he just died though, because I wanted the confirmation of them being like, okay, but we're not like gonna skip into the sunset together.
Yeah. And then
But
Ray was
instead,
just like sad for a second and then just like got back together with everyone else. And also, all the while this is happening, fucking like Jana and Finn are riding space horses on top of a Star Destroyer. And I just,
yeah,
sh- shit was
wait.
wild. I mean, like, I was having fun with it. But I was at a certain point. I literally just said to myself, "Fuck it, Jesus, take the wheel." Like I'm just gonna try and enjoy it because
No,
I do
because
not know what is gonna happen next in this movie. And I think my ADHD chaotic nature makes me enjoy the movie because of that. But like
Mhm.
I understand why a lot of people think it's a hot mess because again, we have a giant beam of force lightning being fired from below after a 120-year-old man just sucked the life force out of two 30-year-olds, and horses are riding on Star Destroyers in a planet that has not existed until just now.
For me, it's when Gianna and Finn jumped onto the top of the Millennium Falcon, which then zipped away very quickly with them on top of it.
Yup.
Which is not the first, but the second time in that movie that the Millennium Falcon flies right next to a Star Destroyer without anyone in the Star Destroyer being. And granted, in that second one, it's a big battle. But you remember,
Mhm.
like early in the movie, when Kylo and Rey are having their fight, and she's like, "Oh look, my ride's here, the Millennium Falcon. Peace out." And like none of the guns of the ship were like, "Oh, the Millennium Falcon's coming close. Maybe we should do something about that."
Tractor
Yeah.
beam, anything. She just jumped through the shield into outer space and it just pulled onto the ship.
Yup.
Yeah, that shit was crazy too. Yeah, I don't know. And it was in that scene, by the way, on the top of the ship where supposedly like Finn was supposed to, instead of like BB-8 kind of being involved, like Finn was supposed to use the Force to like throw the bombs down there, and like, or that was like the
Mhm.
moment where like he was going to use the Force when they decided to cut it.
Of course they did.
Before we wrap up, I want to very quickly touch on, very quickly, just two characters we didn't touch on. Hux and his weird little
Ugh,
arc,
my
and
boy.
what's homeboy's name? His superior.
Oh, Allegiant General something or other.
Yeah, him. He was badass, high key. I wish he'd been in earlier movies. Also would have liked Phasma to be in this movie. Still mad about that. But
Mhm.
Hux just being like, "I'm the spy." Like, that was funny, but like, why? And like, he always said was, "I just need Kylo Ren to lose." Like, you're just that petty, basically. Is that the legacy of Armitage Hux? Is died petty?
Well, it is
Especially because
now.
especially because he doesn't seem to realize that for Kylo to lose, it generally means that the ship that the big bad person is on blows up. And Hux is planning to hang out on that. Yeah, he has no like if he'd been like, I'm planning to take over, but I need Kylo to be humiliated or killed, like
Right.
sure. But there's
And then
just
like,
none of that.
it's just like revealed so quickly. It's like, we found our spy, and then just one blaster bolt to the chest. Like, that could always be a meme. Like, it's just his body flying
No,
backwards.
literally. I was so shocked because I totally forgot how he died. So I'm like minding my business, watching this movie, like da da da. And then yeah, Hux is like, they got away. I ba 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 or whatever. And he just like turns and just doof, and he went flying. I was like,
Yup.
I went, is that how he actually dies? Like, is he? And then I just kept watching the movie, like, oh, but he's actually not
But he's
coming
actually
back,
not coming
though.
back.
He's not coming back. He's gone.
In the
Damn.
original episode 9 script, before everything got completely changed, Hux was the de facto chancellor, who had taken over. And the way he dies is when the rebellion takes place on Coruscant, he commits seppuku with Mace Windu's lightsaber. The original episode 9 script, if anyone has any interest, it's online in its entirety. It is fascinating. High key might have been a better movie than this one. Really fun read though, if you have any spare time.
Okay.
Okay, before we go to the bonus content, let's just talk about the very last scene of the movie.
I would like to
Oh,
mention somebody.
please, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna
please.
give you a chance after Alex did.
Okay, carry
go-
on.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to say was very quickly, just they show up at Tatooine. I appreciated the nod to the original Lars homestead, and the movie where we
Mhm.
started. I appreciated that. And seeing like the little Force ghost of Luke and Leia kind of giving her a nod, again, I appreciated. I could have done without the old woman who we don't know showing up with her little Eopie being like, "Who are you?" I'm Rey Skywalker. Like, what? Was that necessary? I don't know. I don't really know if that was necessary. I think like a peaceful moment of her just watching the sunset and seeing the Force ghost of Luke and Leia nod at her would have been fine. Also, like burying the lightsaber. Anakin is rolling over in whatever fucking Force universe he's in. You're gonna bury his lightsaber in sand? The poor
Sand.
man.
It's
I
rough.
feel like we could have had a really cool like montage of her like doing some of the forms, like some lightsaber practice. Not like a montage, but like the sun is setting and she's okay. So you guys are not amused by that
No, I am listening.
idea, but
I can see it. I can see it being cool.
yeah, that lady was just kind of like abrupt.
Yeah. And like I don't mind at all the idea that she's a Skywalker, but again, there was no setup for it. It just kind of felt out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe there was supposed to be more of like Leia kind of like adopting her. Leia saying like, you are the one who will, carry on for me and my brother or something like that. But we didn't get it because Carrie Fisher passed away.
Yeah.
So Erin, what about you? Any other last things you wanted to bring up? Alex and I
I
had
just
quite a lot to say.
want to mention Lando. We got
Oh,
him back.
good call.
Billy D. Williams. Back in the house. Back in the Falcon.
Mhm.
I liked that moment. That was a sick moment of like, Poe's like, I don't even fucking remember what he was gonna do, but he's like, I'm gonna hit it. And they're like, oh, you're not gonna make it. I'm fast. And Lando goes, but the Falcon's faster. Do, 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 do. Yeah, it was just so good.
That was sweet.
It was weird though that they made him have an illegitimate child, I guess, that was taken as a stormtrooper, but was not explored any further.
Oh, they were being serious about that?
There's an entire book.
Oh,
where they
that's like
explored
actually his
Jannah.
kid.
That's actually his daughter who was stolen.
Jana?
Jana, how do you say it? Is it Jana? It was stolen when she was a baby by the First Order to make her into a stormtrooper.
That's crazy, dude.
All the while, we also are aware that Lando was traveling the universe or galaxy with Luke, looking for Sith relics. So, like, was he just like bopping around with his buddy Luke while his daughter was being enslaved by the First Order? A lot of questions
Yes.
there.
That's
But I also
exactly
did
what
enjoy
happened.
seeing Billy D. Williams. I agree. His random cold entrance in Pisana was wild.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, all of it just makes the galaxy feel so small, you know, that
Yeah.
like they go to the one random planet and he's there and they find this one random stormtrooper and she's his daughter and Rey. Nah. One last happy thing. Come on, someone find one more good thing to say about this movie.
I love I feel almost that Rey and Poe are like jealous exes of Finn. Like they
Yeah.
both want Finn and they hate each other because the other person is a threat to their relationship with Finn. Like, just I really liked the opening sequence. Not opening, sorry, but that one sequence where it's like, what did you do to the Falcon? What did you do to my droid? But what did you do to the ship? It's like, what did you do to my droid? Well, he's not on fire. Well, half of him's missing.
Sorry.
And she goes, you know what you are? You're difficult. Really difficult. You are a really difficult man. And I'm just like, yeah. I like Poe being called on his shit for the second movie in a row.
Yeah, but it definitely had that like, okay, just kiss already energy, you know, like that's why my little polyamorous heart wanted the three of them to kind of ride off into the sunset together.
Yeah, and then instead we just got again Poe loving this other girl. I don't know. I thought that the movie was a really fun adventure, and it might not have had the same like gravity or weight as The Last Jedi. It might not have had the same nostalgia Episode 7. But I think that, you know, for a fun space adventure that like you get to see the original characters, interact with the new characters, you get to like it was extremely fan servicey, which is J.J. Abrams' specialty. But I don't know. As a fan, I enjoyed being serviced in this instance. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna let's rephrase that one.
I cannot believe it.
Children, don't make me turn this bus around.
It was very fan servicey, but as a fan, I appreciated that, and I really think that I got to see like a lot of the characters I wanted to see. I got to explore some Sith lore. I got like a little bit of everything I really wanted, even if it didn't all make total sense, and they've had to backfill it for 5 years. Whatever. It's always going to be a fun movie to me that I'm going to enjoy watching, and I know that a lot of people don't like it, but as well, it exists. I have it on Blu-ray. George Lucas can't destroy those copies like he did the holiday special, so I can watch this movie to the day I die.
That's true. I will say, closing, I'm excited to watch this movie with my parents because every time we cover like a Star Wars movie, I'll watch it with them at some point, either before or after we cover it, just because I'm excited about the movie. And it's just like fun enjoying it with them. And I love being like that Star Wars encyclopedia. Like they're always like, wait, so who's this? Wait, so what does that mean?
Yeah.
Wait, so what's that? And I'm like, I got you. Let's pause it. Get out your notebooks. I want there to be notes.
Yeah, that's I think like if this was one of the standalone movies like Solo or Rogue One, I'd like it a lot more. And I think a movie that had to not only be the end of the trilogy, but the end of the whole 9-movie saga, that's a very high bar to reach. And I'm disappointed that the movie didn't reach it, but yeah, on its own, it's great. So let me just switch topics quickly because we did let there be a solo on Solo episode, and Erin had a lot of great things to say. I hope everyone has listened to it. Certainly send in your listener feedback as always. Send in your listener feedback about this episode. But Erin, I want to close by asking you one simple question.
I'm so ready for this.
So I know you're into astrology. What is it that decides, like you mentioned you're an Aries, you're a fire sign. What does that mean? Like what is the thing that that declares that you're an Aries?
Have you met her?
No. I just mean like it's about something that's happening in terms of different like
It's
objects.
where the moon is when you're born. It's like the moon phase. Like it's the stars. What constellations are in the sky when you're born, basically.
Right, the constellations around
You
the
know
planet
what?
Earth.
You can actually fuck off.
No, I'm just.
They're making fun of me right now because I
confused.
made a
What's
joke
happening?
about Han Solo's zodiac sign and
what
like
is it?
trying to figure it out. Well, they suggested
There
that
is
he
not
was.
because he's born under totally different stars. That's the whole
See,
point.
I'm being mocked, but I was just trying to connect with the girlies and have a good time. Okay,
That's fair. That's fair. I
think
like
he'd be
the
a Leo.
idea. I just had to point out.
That's what I thought. I thought he was a Leo. They said Sag, but
His face. We're done. We're done. We've spoken. We're out.
Bonus content.
Virgo out.
Oh, stay classy, emo Camino.
you're a really difficult man.
That's what we say to all the Aries.
And the
I'll
cancers.
take it.